Getting your house back without an attorney. I want to stress to you that I am not an attorney and I'm not giving you legal advice. However, I want to share a few deed fraud victims' journeys and how they managed to get their rights to sell their property without going through the quiet title legal process. This series is solely focused on victims that had absolutely nothing to do with the change of ownership on their properties. If you didn't pay your mortgage, taxes, HOA, or signed your deed without understanding the implications, this series may not be of value for you. My name is Debbie Gottlieb. I've been a real estate agent or broker since 1994. I was a victim of deed fraud when a criminal pretending to be my dad sold my deceased father's small Scottsdale home to Zillow in 2019 using real estate agents and Fidelity National Title and Escrow. Since then, I've worked with law enforcement, state and local leaders, and attorneys across the United States, and I have a passion to help victims and stop this crime from happening. Thus, I created Title Crime LLC. Title Crime does not employ attorneys or detectives. So Title Crime LLC is not giving you legal advice. This is for educational purposes only. Victim number one's name is Thomas. He was able to sell his house without fighting to get the property back in his name or using an attorney. Thomas purchased his home in 1994. He had no idea that his property was being targeted by criminals. The criminal simply created a deed, signed Thomas's name. It was notarized on September 18th, 2025, and recorded the deed on October 21st, 2025. Then the criminal began calling investors. She did change the locks and had a lockbox put on the house for investors to be able to walk through. One investor made her an offer, but there were signs that made him feel something was not quite right. He was able to connect with the real owner and put him in touch with the title company. The victim was already aware of the fraud and had contacted the police. With the cooperation of the investor and the title company, Scottsdale police set up a sting and arrested the criminal. The title company put together an affidavit of forgery on November 6, 2025, which I'm showing you with the victim's information redacted. Keep in mind, there was no bona fide purchaser, meaning there was not an unknowing buyer that had closed escrow. However, there was a possibility that the criminal could have been working with other investors, in which case, the first one to record the deed could win the property in a race to record state. I'll talk about that terminology in another video. Now, a title company will not typically participate in a sale if the deed is not clear and title insurance cannot be issued. What gets interesting is the investor was also a realtor. The victim had intended to sell the house and ended up selling the house to the realtor, his hero. That realtor investor took out a hard money loan, which is relatively loose on requirements versus a loan from a Bank of America or Wells Fargo requiring an appraisal and other documents. And he used the title company that helped to issue the affidavit of forgery and conducted the sting. Then the agent investor flipped the house for a pretty good profit to another investor who again took out a hard money loan and used the same title agency. So the fraudulent deed was overruled by using an affidavit of forgery. What will be interesting is to see what happens when a lender that you or I might use or another title company gets in the picture further down the chain of title. But for the victim, it doesn't matter. Title company ignored the fraudulent deed and moved forward with the transaction. And Thomas was able to sell his house. Victim number two is Robin Mobley from Ohio. Robin handled everything by herself with the courts, which is very impressive, and she won her home back. Her criminal, using an attorney, even appealed the court decision, and she did win the appeal. She's all over YouTube. I've never talked to her. I've watched a number of her news interviews and a video she made with a couple other victims. You could be lucky and try to do it yourself, but I will tell you that you might not have the same luck, and it's my opinion that it would be better to find a real estate attorney. Robin, if you're listening, you're amazing. Victim number three's name is Roy. Roy was on vacation when his house was stolen by a serial house stealer that stole a few other homes in his neighborhood. The criminal simply had an online document preparer prepare a few deeds, must have had a few fake IDs, had the documents notarized, and then he recorded them. Roy filed a police report with the Attorney General. However, Roy did not have the funds to hire an attorney. He found an investor to buy the property that knew the circumstances with regards to the fraud. So as a part of the sale, the buyer and seller hired an attorney to go to the court with a quiet title lawsuit filed by statute, and it was able to get the court to award Roy the property so that he could finish the sale. The attorney fees would be deducted from Roy's profit at close of escrow. The criminal did not come forward to contest the quiet title lawsuit. Therefore, the property was reverted back to Roy. And Roy, without coming up with attorney fees, is now free to sell his property. Victim number 4 is Olivia. Olivia's criminal is the same one that stole Roy's property. Olivia's father had passed away over 2 decades ago, and the title was still in her father's name until a criminal with a fake ID recorded a new deed and transferred it into the criminal's name. A realtor had been knocking on doors and ran across Olivia that wanted to sell her father's property. In this case, the real estate agent worked with Olivia to hire an attorney to start the probate process. Additionally, a criminal investigation was opened with the Attorney General. As the only heir, the probate court awarded Olivia the home. Of course, I don't think the probate courts do a title search and clear title. However, because the probate court awarded the home to Olivia after the fraudulent transfer, title is ignoring the fraud and allowing Olivia to sell her dad's home. Moving on to Cook County, also known as Chicago, Illinois, Karen Yarborough was Cook County's clerk, also known as a county recorder, and she left a legacy for deed fraud victims. She had the insight to create a property fraud unit that would investigate and help the victim get their properties back in deed fraud cases. It's up to the victim to pay for and file with the court to get their property back, and the fraud unit doesn't file any type of injunction. So the property is at risk of being sold during the investigation, but it is a service to the victim. And if you're a victim without the means to hire an attorney, this might be a solution for you. For more information, please Google Cook County Property Fraud Unit or email clerk.recordsfraud@cookcountyil.gov to help. They also have a pro bono legal team for specific items related to your deed. Next, let's move on to Wayne County, Michigan, and Detroit. In 2005, the brainchild of 3 people, Prosecutor Kim Worthy, then Sheriff Warren Evans, and Register of Deeds Bernard Youngblood, created a mortgage and deed fraud unit. Deed fraud hotline is 313-224-5869. I've seen articles, and they're effective with prosecution and recovering victims' properties. If you're a victim in Wayne County, you should definitely reach out to this organization. Find out the possible shortcomings and engage an attorney as you see fit. I have talked to both units in the past. Keep in mind that while they're doing their investigation, the criminal has your title and can mortgage and sell the property, causing further and possibly unrecoverable damage. So it still might be in your best interest to at least consult with an attorney to file a lis pendens. For more information on what a lis pendens is, please watch my video on attorneys. Now, in Texas, Senate Bill 1734 was passed in 2025 and is now a law. My hope is that you will see an update from me on YouTube. This bill allows the victim to file a document with the court without an attorney, stating the deed is fraudulent and requesting that the court return the property to its rightful owner. The victim has 120 days from the date of the recorded fraudulent deed to file. So if you discovered the fraud after 120 days, this won't pertain to you. You must also send a notice to the buyer and seller listed on the deed. The buyer and seller will then have 120 days to contest. So let's go through this with my case. The criminal sold the house on November 12th. I found out in December. My interpretation of this Texas law is my next step would be to notify Zillow and my deceased father with a registered letter. So Zillow would have 120 days to contest with the courts. This would have done nothing for me. With the 120 days, Zillow would have resold the house. So use this law as you see fit. But there are a lot of loopholes. And my personal opinion is I still think you need an attorney to make sure nothing further happens to the deed. If your state has other options, or you've had success on your own, please comment. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe.